Begin with prayer. In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. Dear Father in heaven, bless us that we might see your commandments and know them to be the laws of love, both loving you and our neighbor, that we might learn to love you, fill our hearts with your Holy Spirit, so that we might love you always. Amen. So just a brief review. We have to understand who we are in the eyes of God. That was the rich man and Lazarus. Okay, so the rich man, he thinks that he's got it all figured out. And what happens to him?
Didn't go good for him.
He goes to hell.
Yeah, he went to hell.
Yeah. And so the rich man goes to hell. And what happens to Lazarus? He goes to heaven. Yeah. Why does Lazarus go to heaven? I know. I'm sorry. I should have told you we were going to have quizzes. You can guess. Don't worry.
Because he didn't care about anything like physically.
Good. Okay. So he wasn't clinging to the things of this life. Yeah. Good. If he wasn't trusting those things, what was he trusting? God. So it is. That's exactly what you're saying. So you said, I like that. So you cling to the things, and really another way of saying that is you have faith, right? Faith is clinging, and so when I grab the things I can see, then I will have those things that I can see, and whatever they are. So all things in this life change, pass away. But if I'm grabbing eternal things, then I have everlasting life. So that's what happened for Lazarus, is he had everlasting life because he clung to God. We find out, though, that how he clung to God is very important. And that's in Moses and the prophets. So the Old Testament sometimes is called Moses, right? And so Moses was the first 5 books, Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy. And then the prophets sometimes is like the rest of it. Okay, so Moses and the prophets is shorthand for saying the Bible. So Lazarus knew the Bible, clung to the promise in the Bible. And what is the one promise of the Bible? Or let me go back. What is the topic of the Bible? Or, well, I'll leave it there. What is the topic of the Bible? If you were to pick one thing that the Bible is all about.
Faith.
Yes. So you're almost there, but faith always has an object. What is the object?
Faith in God.
It's faith in God. It's God himself. And clinging to God means clinging to his actual person. And how you cling to God is by Jesus. So the first 3 commandments are, you shall have no other gods. Remember the Sabbath day by keeping it holy. And, you shall have no other gods. You shall not misuse the name of the Lord your God. And remember the Sabbath day by keeping it holy, right? Or here's the shorthand for it: trust, pray, listen. Okay, that's an easy way to do it. So that's loving God. Now we turn to loving our neighbor the other day, and our first story then was Jesus giving sort of a list of things in Matthew chapter 5, and Matthew chapter 5 is the Sermon on the Mount, and so Jesus is going through, and here's how he starts. I did not come to remove the law and the prophets, but to fulfill them. And so he's telling the Pharisees, you need a different kind of righteousness to fulfill the law. But you must fulfill it. Okay? And what is the law? So he actually jumps right, instead of jumping into the first 3 commandments, trust, pray, listen to God. Okay? The last 7 commandments are about other people, our neighbor. Okay? How do I deal with people? And so the last 7 commandments, Jesus starts with the very first one. Technically the second one, but that's okay. The first one that deals with other people is the 4th commandment: honor your father and your mother. We talked about that last time, and it is the people that are closest to you because they are God to you. They're literally who you are from. If your parents don't exist, guess what? You don't exist, right? And love them or hate them, that's just true. Okay? So and because God uses people, and those people happen to be who you are from, your parents, your mother, your father, then God tells us we must honor them. It doesn't keep this in mind. It doesn't mean that we have to do what they say when it's against God. But if it's not against God, and we're their child, we should do our best to do it. Right? Okay, so then jumping into the rest of the commandments, we did the fifth commandment, you shall not murder, and we brought into that commandment the value of human life. So life begins at conception. Okay? And conception is when the egg and the sperm unite. That's conception. Okay? It's not later on, 5 days, 10 days when the heart beats. It's when that happens. And so that's life. And if you try to end that life, you're committing murder. Okay? All the way to the end of life. So no matter how old you get, you don't lose value. So you are valuable from your conception to your death, and any attempt to take your life, even from yourself, is murder. And then let's see, anything. Oh yeah, we talked about capital punishment. That the government does have that authority. Okay? They don't have to use that authority, but they have it. And a just war, meaning the only war that is just or right is when I'm defending myself and defending those who are within my country. Okay, so we dealt with the sixth commandment. Actually, no, I think we ended on the sixth commandment. Yes. We did not do that. Okay, so that's on page 53. I thought we were on the eighth, but we're on the sixth. So, sixth commandment, it says you should not commit adultery, but let's go the other direction. What is the positive of that? So that's the negative, right? Don't commit adultery. But what would the positive be? If I'm not committing adultery, what am I doing? Well, first of all, what is adultery? Good. And not just anyone. So it's deeper than that. You're right. It is your significant other, but it's got to be this thing. They have to be your spouse.
Right,
yeah. So yeah. But I'm glad you brought that up, because I think a lot of people broaden that to even boyfriend, girlfriend.
Right.
And that's not actually cheating. Now, it's wrong in other ways, right? I mean, you're betraying someone, but it's not adultery. Okay, adultery is reserved for marriage, and it's when a spouse that is married to another goes and has relations with another spouse, or no, I'm sorry, another person. Could be another spouse, but another person. Okay, so they're violating marriage. Okay, they're breaking their marriage now. If that's the negative, don't break your marriage. What is the positive? What should you do? Good. Honor your marriage. Yeah. Keep your marriage. Take care of your marriage, right? So really what God is commanding is those who have spouses must keep them and treat them in the best way. So husbands must honor their wives. Wives should submit to their husbands and love them. And both should work together to honor the marriage that God made. So God made marriage. He made it all the way back in Genesis. Adam and Eve. And Adam was alone. He said, it's not good for man to be alone. He puts Adam to sleep. And he takes a rib from his side, makes Eve. And then once he makes Eve, he brings them together. Adam looks at Eve and says, at last, bone of my bone, flesh of my flesh. But then God marries them. He says, now I tell you, a man will leave his father and mother and cling to his wife, and the two shall become one flesh. God makes marriage between one man and one woman, and the promise that they make to each other and the consummation that they have of their bodies. All those things must happen. So if any of those things is skipped or changed, it's no longer marriage. Okay, so we have this other word here, fornication. So fornication is if you are having sex outside of marriage, and that's any. So adultery is if one of you is married, that's adultery. But if neither of you are married, you're still taking something from marriage, and you have violated what God created. Okay, so now all of these things are things that God forgives. Right? So when we break God's commandments, we don't say, well, I didn't do it. Or we try to redefine them, right? And that's what a lot of people try to do, right? Well, we were just testing the waters, or we were just doing this, or we just wanted to live. It's like, no, you were wrong. God pays for this, and now make it right. Okay. So my counsel to those who are in those situations is, well, okay, you're committed to each other clearly, right? And you want to be, well, then what do? Get married, right? It's the simplest thing, it seems so simple. And marriage today, I will say, is very scary in the sense that people don't treat it with any respect.
Right.
And so it becomes sort of a terrifying thing to say, well, I'm going to commit my life to you, but I don't know who you're going to be in like a year. So, and I don't know if you're going to try to leave me or what. So I understand the fear, but we don't have to worry about the fear. As Christians, when we do things, we do them because God says so. And so that person's unfaithful. I mean, it's an immense amount of pain. I'm not saying it's not, but you still did the right thing. Right? You married that person, and they did the wrong thing, right? So adultery is if there's a spouse of someone involved. Fornication is sex outside of marriage. Homosexuality, of course, we hear about that all the time on every commercial, in every show, which is depressing. But it's a man and a man, or a woman and a woman,
Sure.
which is a physical impossibility. And so that behavior is wrong, right? And because of that, we have to tell people this is sinful. Now, that being said, we don't have to hate them. Right? I'm not required to look at them really mean, or harm their property or make them feel like they're this big. I am not required, nor should I ever do that to anyone. Right. But what we are required to do is to tell people the truth. Right? And so now that doesn't mean that if you see someone, out on the street, you don't have to be like, hey, God thinks that's sin. You need to stop it. You don't have to do that. But it does mean when you have people who come to you and say, well, you're good with this, right? You can say, I'm not. I don't think that's good for you. I think it's harmful to you. I still love you, but I think that's wrong. Right? But you can do that gently, right? And do that without yelling at them or making them feel like they're nothing. But and you can also include this. I am a sinner. And I also sin every day. And I need Christ to forgive my sins. And that's what you could have too. Right? And I want you to have that because I don't want you to stay in this. The thing about sin, and the sixth commandment, this is really big deal because when we break this commandment, it feels the best, even though it's wrong. Right? So we're with someone we love. And we're thinking to ourselves, how can love be wrong? Right? And so it's easy to be deceived. Right? Well, I love this person. Or for the homosexual couple, well, I love this man like I would love my wife. And so, or for the woman who says, well, I love this woman like I'd love a husband. And then the question comes, well, who are you to tell me who I can love? God can. I can't. Right? Because I don't make the rules. but God made us this way. And because God made us, we know that not only is he just making rules, it's good. A man and a woman are meant to be attracted to each other, and that's good. So the homosexuality part, that's easier to point out. It's even harder when it's a man and a woman and they're just together to say, well, you're almost there. Right. But you can't just stay there, right? You got to go beyond. You have to be promised to one another. You're not going to leave each other, and that promise is going to bind you in a marriage. Right? So all of that is connected to marriage itself and how God wants us to be a man and a woman together. Right? But the great thing is, it's beautiful when it is there. Right? My parents, praise God, they remained married, and they had a great marriage. And still do. They're not perfect. My dad did all kinds of things. When I look back, I'm like, no, that was probably not good, Same with my mom, right? But at the same time, I look at them and I see them committed to each other and serving each other. So I think one of the lies we believe is that marriages can't work because people are broken. And that's not true. people can be married until they die. Now, marriages do break, and it's sad when that happens. But so let's deal with that then. So divorce. When is divorce permissible?
When the spouse cheated.
Okay, good. And we have this exception from Jesus. He says, he does not permit us to have a divorce except for the case of adultery. So what happens in adultery is you're actually separating the one flesh. You have combined your flesh with another flesh, and because of that, your marriage is actually dead. It died. And so you're technically dead to one another. Now, you can forgive that person. You don't have to get divorced. So, if your future spouse cheats on you, God forbid, you don't have to say, well, you cheat on me, I have to get rid of you. Right? You can forgive and attempt to restore that. And that's actually the best thing to do if it's possible. Most of the time it's not, because the person doesn't want reconciliation. They want to leave, right? So, but that's the reason why the only thing that ends a marriage is actually death. But we can die to someone even while we're living when we commit adultery. So the other way this happens, hey Mark, come on in. The other way this happens is if a person is deserted. So desertion happens if a person leaves and refuses to come back.
Can't stay, sorry, but that's your class.
Oh, perfect. All right.
Have a blessed week.
I can only accept this in cursive. I'm kidding. All right. So desertion is when a spouse leaves and refuses to return. So that frees the other spouse. If they try everything they can and they can't get that person to come home, then that person becomes dead to them and they're free to remarry. So those are the two cases, and they're sort of the same kind, because it just means a spouse has left you and they will never return.
I thought it was the other one said to remarry is a sin.
So yes, if they, you're talking about. So I'm forgetting now. It's either Mark or Matthew. I think it's Mark, because he sort of removes the exception.
Right.
But then in Matthew there is an exception.
Okay.
So I think Mark, he's leaning on the fact that if you do this, the assumption is you didn't have the exception. The assumption is you're doing this and no one committed adultery. Right. Yeah. So I think that's the assumption in Mark. Whereas in Matthew, the assumption is that the person if this happens, the only way that it can happen is in adultery. And Jesus himself makes that exception.
Sure.
So, Okay. So those are the two exceptions to marriage, and the fact that it can die, which is a sad thing. But divorce then for Christians is just an acknowledgement that it has. So we don't seek a divorce in that way. So I'm not going to go out and say, well, you know what? I'm tired of this, gal, and I'm going to be done with her, because I'm just not happy. Too bad. Learn to be happy, right? Right. So, and I say that flippantly. I know there are situations that are very bad and people suffer, but at the same time, commitments sadly include a lot of suffering, right? This happens with children. My children aren't old enough to cause me too much pain, but they may cause me pain later, right? And I know many children who do cause their parents a lot of pain, but they can't divorce their children, right? Well, you're not my child anymore, right? Yeah.
What about domestic abuse?
Good question. So this is another form of death. So now the problem is we sort of pull that trigger too soon, right? So in domestic abuse, just because someone hits someone doesn't mean they want to kill them, right? That's, they might have an anger problem. They might have something else going on. So the immediate is you need to get counsel. And if it's bad enough, you need to separate, right? And just have that time apart and then monitor the situation. If it becomes life-threatening, then that becomes, because again, the person's dead to you, that you can't be with them without dying yourself. And so that becomes another scenario of, we would just call it another form of desertion, that you can't be with that person because they refuse to let you live, right? So then that's a reason to be divorced. But the problem is people usually say, well, he got angry with me and he has anger problems. Well, that is a problem, and that should be solved, and you need to solve it. But it's not immediately a reason, right? And again, it's hard to say nowadays, but even when people put hands on each other, that's not an immediate reason for divorce, right? Take the time, go through the counseling. Now, one of the problems happens though usually this is the way it all works. They refuse to go to counseling.
Mhm.
They refuse to get any help, and then you're sort of stuck, right? Because is it life-threatening? Is it going to become life-threatening? And if they're refusing to do anything about it, then you're going to have to make some hard decisions. I wish it was always so simple, right? Well, every time I do this, or every time this happens, they go to counseling and they fix it, right? But it's also not the other way either. Every time that you suggest counseling, they won't do it, right? That's also not always the case. So it's a very, very case by case, but it always comes down to this. Is there a threat to life? And if that's there, then you got to deal with it. You got to be honest with it, and say, well, if I cannot live and be in this relationship, then we have to end it. So, okay. But you notice these are the closest things to us, right? And the commandments. So, but let's go on the other end. What does it look like to be a good? Well, let's start with you, Chris, since you're the man. What does it look like to be a good husband? What would you say if you were to just give let's say 2 things that would make a good husband?
A provider and a leader, I'd say.
Oh, good, yeah, those are great things. And so when you're leading, what's your guide? Where are you leading to, as a husband?
To the start, no.
Yeah.
To heaven.
Yeah. So this is the great thing, is that a good husband is going to lead, and they're going to lead to God. And who wouldn't want to follow that, right? I mean, who is going to be like, no, I don't want to go there.
Right.
So a good husband then, being a leader, is not, I'm going to make you do what I say, but rather, I am going to make decisions for our family that make us go towards God. Yeah. And same thing with providing, right? Well, what kind of things are you going to provide?
Right. Shelter.
Yeah. Yeah. Right.
Lights,
So who would be like, I really hate living in a house.
Yeah.
I really just, and like food is so overrated. So these 2 things are beautiful virtues, and when they're working well, I cannot say what woman would not want those things, right? Okay, on the wife's side, I know you're not a wife yet, but let's project out. What you would like to be. What are 2 things you think a wife should do or should be to her husband? So if a husband's going to be a leader and a provider, what should a wife look like?
Well, according to submitting and following his direction.
Okay, yeah. So if you don't have one, you can't have the other. Well, you can still be a leader, but it's really hard if the person doesn't want to follow you. So yeah, there is a gift in submission that is a very, very beautiful thing. And actually, we see it all the time with good football teams. Everyone on that team is submitting. Mm-hmm. Who are they submitting to? Their coach, right? A good team, and if you're on offense, you're submitting to the quarterback,
sure,
right? Because he's the leader. And if you all work together, let's go the other way. If the people, let's say the linemen who are to protect the quarterback, they decide, they're going to do what they want. What's going to happen?
Jared's in trouble.
That's right. Yeah. Goff is dead. Okay.
Yeah.
And that's then the way it works, because you work as a team, but the team has a leader, right? We sort of have this weird concept that, we can be leaderless. That's impossible. Mm-hmm. But being a leader doesn't mean that you're demeaning everyone else. It actually uplifts all their positions, because you can't be a leader without them, right? Jared Goff would be nothing if he didn't have receivers, right? That would be stupid, right? But when he does have them, he can get the ball in the field, right? And in that simple way, when we look at a marriage, it's not that one is more valuable than another, but both are necessary, right? And it is just a beautiful thing when the Lions, truly just demolish the other team,
Sure.
right? And it's a beautiful thing when a marriage works together and they can support one another, right? And here's the great thing: God made us this way. He made men to be leaders, and He made women want to submit so that they can be nurturing, right? That's just how He made us. And so when we fit those things, it's a beautiful thing. Now, that doesn't mean we don't have different personalities, right? Everyone does this a little different. So how you divide things up or whatever it might be. But marriage is a gift. And it's a gift because it's the way we're meant to be together as a husband and a wife. So when we sin against that, and here's the thing: you can sin against this without committing adultery, right? That's the like very end. But before that, you can start thinking this way: if my wife was like this, she'd be a better wife. If my husband did what that guy does, he'd be a better husband. And then it starts snowballing, right? And then you start talking to people. Right. Yeah, right. And all of a sudden, you're completely dissatisfied with your husband or your wife, and now this is leading to other things, right? Right. Whereas in a marriage, your job as a husband is not to make her a good wife. Your job is just to be a good husband. And in a marriage, your job is going to be not to make him a good husband, but to be a good wife. Now, of course, you can counsel from God's word and say, this is what God has said about being a husband, or this is what God has said about being a wife. But in the end, your job is to be that person, right? To be a good husband, regardless of the other person, right? Even if they're not doing any of those things, right? Okay. So but what I'm saying there is, the great part about it is you can always serve the other. You can always serve the other person, right? A husband can always serve his wife, even if she is really making it hard, right? And a wife can always serve her husband, even if he's really making it hard. And when we begin to see that, and if we really see that other person is like, wow, I know myself, I know how bad I am, and then that person is just doing what they can to serve me, it's a crazy thing. And it's a wonderful thing. Okay, so let's see. Oh yes, and chastity, of course, is good to talk about. Is in a marriage, you don't think about other women, period, right? And besides, men don't think about other women. And then in a marriage, women don't think about other men, right? So even our thoughts are trained on that one person. Only they get to fill those desires, right? And this is a great part. They do get to fill those desires, right? The desire we have for our spouse is good. So that's why, when you're looking for a husband, it's good to be attracted to him, right? That's a good thing. But we don't use that until we're married, right? So we don't say, oh, those desires are evil. They're not evil, but they can only be used once we make a promise, right? Okay. So that is adultery. Oh, and so stepping outside of our own selves, our own marriages, or our own thoughts about who we would like to marry, we also support marriages. So if there is someone who we're talking to, let's say you have a girlfriend who's married, not a girlfriend, but like a friend who's a girl.
Yeah.
See today. But she's married and you're talking to her and she's just telling you all these bad things about her husband. Like, man, he's lazy and you'd be like, well, I'm sure maybe he's going through something. And, as opposed to be like, yeah, you're right, he is lazy. You should look for someone else.
Right.
Or the guys that were, they're like, oh, hey, man, look at this, this hot chick. And you're like, no, that's good. I'm good. I got, and even, your friend who's sort of lost in some of those things, like, hey, man, you got a wife.
Right.
She would, why don't you just get a picture of her and just look at her, right? I mean, don't be, looking at all these other people. So that's how we can help other people to assist them and uphold marriage itself. Okay. Let's do page 54. How do we confess our sins in this? So my God has given me the gift of sexuality that I might love and honor my spouse selflessly. Oh, I forgot this. The procreation of children. Sorry about that. That's a really important thing. So when God made us, he made us with children in mind,
Mhm.
right? And nowadays, contraception is a huge, no one even talks about it anymore
Mhm.
because, well, you pick how many kids you're going to have and then you're done. But that's not quite the way we should think of it. Instead, we should think of it as, I'm going to invite as many children into my life as I can, right? And difficulties come, and one thing I want you to be very clear about is everything else besides barrier method contraception can commit abortion. So be very careful with any, birth control, because every pill form can cause the death of a
What did you
child.
say was the exception?
The barrier method,
What's
condoms.
Oh,
So that's the only thing that will not cause an abortion,
right.
right? Any chemical method can cause an abortion. And they'll tell you, oh, no, it prevents conception. It doesn't.
Right.
I mean, maybe they've come out with some new drugs since then, but I don't think so. Right. So if ever there is, for instance, a huge constraint on your family and you decide, you know what, I'm just a little, fearful of having children right now, that's one thing, right? Or maybe here's another big example is your wife is actually, her life is in danger if she has another child,
Mhm.
which does happen.
Mhm.
Then you can say, all right, well, clearly we don't want to just be abstinent for
Sure.
a year or longer, but we can use this barrier method to be together. So, but that being said, that's only an exception. That's when you're in emergency mode and you're thinking, I'm a little concerned about this, and most of the time we can put it on the health of my wife, right? Is she really going to be harmed if she goes through this? And I would rely on the doctors, not just, she doesn't feel good. It's like, well, I mean, okay, but it's good to have an opinion. And many doctors will tell you like, oh yeah, well, this could cause, this or this.
So how about like a woman getting her tubes tied or a second?
Well, again, it goes to the danger part, right? So if you're in that situation where the doctor has said to you, look, clearly I'm not God. I can't tell you what's absolutely going to happen, but based on your last pregnancy, there's a 90% chance that you're going to get eclampsia and you might die, right? So if there's something like that, maybe I still would go with not mutilating the body, right? Just stay away from that. I know it might, seem better, but I still think it's best to not surgically do that. But that being said, I don't think it's totally out of the question because of the life-threatening issue. But I think that usually you're not dealing with a life-threatening issue. Usually you're like, well, this would be way more convenient.
Right.
Or I like, where we're at right now, and I just think we're done. That kind of choice is not an invitation to children. Because you're going to stretch. I can't tell you how many people I so how can you have 5 children and be a pastor? It's like, well, I'm doing it. Right. We're fine, right? You learn to live with the what you got. So I think that it's a far cry from just saying, well, I'm just going to not have, or I'm only going to have 2 kids. It's like, well, again, there's no way you can make that determination. Now there are things that you may choose to say, look, my wife is in deep distress, and she, right now, I think it would really, I don't think she's ready to take care of a child right now because she's got a life-threatening whatever, or she's got some kind of chemical imbalance in her body, something like that. But that's really it. I mean, that's really, where we're like, well, outside of that, it's just usually financial constraints, but yeah. So that's where the point is we always welcome children. And then if something comes up, something, health-wise that's threatening our family, we deal with it. Right? But again, the goal is that we only do that with the barrier method because that's not
permanent solution.
Right. It's not permanent. You're not mutilating your body, and you're not committing abortion on accident. So that's what you want to stay away from. Okay. So I'm in the page 54, the first italicized. Have I used for my own pleasure my ears to hear stories to incite cravings of the body for one who is not my spouse, or my mouth to speak such words and stories? So again, when I'm listening to things and it's making me want someone else, right? And I mean, with our bodies, right? I'm like, okay, romance novels. Sorry, same thing. Okay, throw them out. Okay, I'm not saying you have any. But that's exactly. So if you think about a romance novel, what is the purpose? It's to excite you physically, right? That's their whole purpose. So if you're having those conversations with anyone, let alone reading in a book, that's when oh wait, this is not. My spouse is for that, and if I don't have a spouse, I need to find one so that can be the case. Okay, seventh commandment. You shall not steal. This is sort of an obvious one. God gives us property, and so we don't take our neighbor's property. And not only that, but we don't try to trick him into giving it to us, right? So that's usually the harder one. But one of the ways I think about stealing is if you're on the job, and you're not doing what you really should be doing, right? So that's still stealing from your employer. Even though you're not technically taking stuff, you're on the clock and you're sort of, not doing what you should. So I think that's probably our greatest temptation in our day is sort of to, hang back and, so that I think is harder to catch. Let's see, anything else, in property? Oh, stewardship. So here's the other thing. Our money is meant for other people. So this is it's a big change of thinking because usually, especially in America, money is for access to what I want. But it's actually for supporting those that I love. That's what money's for. That's what my property is for, right? Otherwise, why would I mean, what would life be about, right? Gaining more stuff for myself? God, Christ is the example. He did not need to come. He did not need to become man. He did not need any of those things. But he did it, and he used everything he was for our sake, even though he didn't have to, right? And that's what we now see is, so it frees us from saying, well, why do you have a job? Well, so that I can support my family, right? And so that I can support the people that I love. That's why I have a job. I don't have a job because I need to eat. Well, God's going to take care of that, right? But he told me that I do need to work, and I do want to do things to help my family, right? So it frees us from the idea that, well, I don't have enough. Well, do you not have enough? What would enough be, right? Yeah. So as long as my family is eating, and there's a roof over their head, then that's going to look very different in different countries, right? Sometimes that looks like a thatch roof made of grass, and it looks like you went out and killed a hog that day, and your children are eating. Great. Sometimes it looks like this, where we have a huge building and we have air conditioning, and but that's a mindset change to say, I'm going to use my things for another person. Okay, so that's the positive. Okay, let's turn to page 56. Oh, look, he used that example. So the first italicized, have I been lazy at work, doing poor work in school, or at my job, or working hard only when the teacher or the boss is around? That is, I always tell my kids, and then I have to remind myself that, well, we have homework. Well, who is it from? My teacher. Well, who is your teacher from? God.
Right.
So then your homework's from God. Yeah. So you do your homework because you want to do it for God, right? And when you don't do your homework, you're telling God you don't care, right? So these are the things, the small things where we don't think about them, but it's true. Anything we don't do is, and break God's commandment, we're doing it against God. He told us to do it, and now we're specifically saying no. Right?
So, question, does that go the same way, say like an employer to an employee? Like, like say this is your job description or whatever you want to do, like a school's students, this is what we expect, but then they keep loading things on top of you that maybe isn't.
Oh, yeah. So you're saying that can an employer abuse this? Yes, they can. And
you're supposed to go with it?
Well, it depends on, so there are boundaries here. And so I would say the boundary then becomes if it's affecting your other vocations. So for instance, if your employer makes it to where you can't serve your family because you're so busy doing things.
Or what about not paying you accordingly?
The pay is harder, but I would say I would go to the family again and just say, look, I can't live on this wage.
Sure, there you go.
right? It's because I'm doing this work and it's causing me to use extra time for my family, and I need that to support my family. So it makes it easier to sort of say, I would usually go with time, right? So how much time am I taking?
Sure.
Are you taking from what I need to give to my family? And that's moldable, right? I mean, you can sort of figure out ways, if you're a night shift guy, to figure out things to do during the day with your family or something. But that being said, I think that's the easiest test to say, is my employer giving me so much that I can't serve my family?
Right.
And then you can and then you negotiate. You say, well, look, I am going to serve my family.
Sure.
And that means with my time and my attention. The amount of work you're giving me, I can't do that.
Well, I meant more like, say, commission to do this wall.
Mm-hmm.
You're like, okay, well, for this wall, we're going to give you 60 hours to get it completed and say $2,000.
Sure.
Right? And they're like, oh, well, you did that so great. We want you to do this other wall, but we're not going to give you no more money, no more time. Just toss it in there for you if you can. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Something
Well, and I would say in the American,
when does it become you stick up for yourself almost?
Yeah, I think you can, because with an employer, now that's the other thing we're talking about, because again, that time you're going to take from your family.
Right, you take away from your own self, your family.
Right. So, and the money, right? So the reason you argue with an employer about money is because you need to care for your family.
Right.
And so you need to argue about that with your employer and say, look, I will do this job, but if I don't get this, I'm going to have to look for other work because I have to feed my family.
Sure.
I have to be with my family. And right now, this ain't fitting.
So then it would almost be a sin on them to do that to you.
Right. Correct. Yeah. So go the other way. If I was an employer, I need to fairly pay my employees. I need to give them a livable wage. I can't just say, well, this is enough for you. It's like, well, because every employer should think if they're employing someone full-time, can they live and provide for their family on this wage? Right? And if they can't, then I either shouldn't employ them or I need to change something.
Right.
So yeah, that's on the employer too. I mean, if you're a Christian employer.
Sure. Well,
and the nature of our employment in America is that we are independent, and so we can say no.
Right.
Right. So if an employer says, well, I need you to do this, you need to work 70 hours a week. Well, I'm not going to do that, and I'm going to have to get another job unless you change that, because I'm not going to be away from my family for 70 hours a week.
Right.
I'm just not going to do that. And I mean, some of it's just honesty, right? I can't do that work for that, and that's why I go with the time, because it's a little more clear.
Right.
Because I can say, look, if I'm working 50 hours a week, I'm already eking out time with my family. If I work 60, I'm really missing. And if I work 70 hours, I'm not going to see them at all. Right. So it sort of gives me an amount of time I can work. And also, with pay, that's a little easier. Well, I mean, it can be because you got a budget, right? Well, this is what I need for this work. And, if you can't do that, I'm going to have to.
Sure.
So I think that's where you don't have to be afraid to do that with an employer, because you're serving your family. Right. Whereas if I said, well, I'd really like a bigger truck. So in order to get that bigger truck, I need you to pay me more.
Right.
And so I'm going to complain about my wages so that I can get that truck. Right. I mean, that's a little, he might need to pay you more, but I mean, the motive is so bad. It's
just
right. So use your other vocations to say, well, because then you can stand up as a Christian and be like, I need to do that. Yeah. Okay. 8th commandment. You shall not give false testimony against your neighbor. What does this mean? I'm on page 57. We should fear and love God so that we do not tell lies about our neighbor, betray him, slander him, or hurt his reputation, but defend him, speak well of him, and explain everything in the kindest way. Okay, well, this is, with social media, it's sort of, it's really crazy. You experience this probably more than Chris and I do, because we just don't care. But whenever one is on that thing,
right,
then it's very, very difficult. I mean, I'm sure all your friends are on Instagram and on. Do they use Facebook anymore? No. What do they use now? Snapchat. Okay. And what else? TikTok. Okay. Now that's self. Like you send your pictures of yourself to other people, right?
Snapchat, and then on TikTok it's just videos of
TikTok. Yeah. Okay. So you're just watching other people.
Instant gratification.
Yeah. So then it's very easy to spread rumors and gossip, and I'm sure you've experienced that, or have you experienced? Maybe your school's so good you haven't experienced that.
No.
So no matter what, you're going to deal with this. That other people are going to try to damage your reputation, and you'll be very, very tempted to damage other people's reputation. So a reputation is given by God, and later on, especially, it means a lot. Because if you can't be trusted, you're not going to get hired for anything. So it might seem small now, but later on, like, oh, well, that guy, did this and this. All of a sudden, you've got employers looking at that saying, well, I'm not going to hire you now. And now you can't get a job. And now it's going to impact what you can eat and how you can provide for your family. Right. So, and that's what happens, as you get, into the corporate world, or even in I don't know how much it impacts your job, but you get one. Well, let's say you go do service at a house, and all of a sudden they start blasting you on the internet. Oh, yeah, right. And then you got your employer down your neck, like, hey man, what'd you do? And
or they do like you said, go online and put a review.
That's it,
hey,
right?
Was here and broke my window or whatever.
Right, even though they broke their window, but they wanted insurance to pay for it.
Sure.
So I mean, it only gets problems that are at your level only get higher and more expensive. So they're just as real there. So it's good for us to remember God gives reputations, and to always treat another as if you're trying to preserve their reputation with everything you got. Right? Even if they make you so mad. So here's how you do it. First of all, you never lie about another person, right? Even if they make you angry, but to betray him, I like that. So when you betray someone, you act like they're friends so that you can get something, and then you're against them.
Trusted story.
Yeah, right. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, get them to trust you, get the thing you need, and then you make them look bad. Right. Slander is there's a sign on the highway now that says, Cure Insurance is like 14th highest ranking of complaints in the nation. That's slander, right? So it's when you try to make someone look really bad with what you say. This is general, hurt his reputation, right? So if there is a time when you go and tell someone about what someone did, right? You should do that, but it only is to an authority that can do something about it, right? So I will not let my neighbor, be on my property without me saying so. And if he keeps doing that, I'm not going to go tell other people or tell Facebook or complain to you. I'm going to go to the police and say, get this guy off my property. He keeps on violating my property. And they have and they should carry that out. So it doesn't mean we can't deal with problems, people causing us problems. But what it does mean is I don't go around and tell everybody
to gossip.
People who can't do anything about it.
Right.
But I can tell a police officer, you can tell a teacher, I can speak to our church council here if I have a problem. You can tell your boss, right, if you have a problem. And that's good.
So in turn, say that I'm your neighbor and I'm doing that to you every time you say, hey, get off my property, blah, blah. But you should go to your other neighbor or somebody else and say that he's a good person as well.
No. So you don't have to do that, but you also don't have to tell him.
You just don't say anything about it.
You just don't say anything.
So it's like when you get I remember that there used to be a rule, like if you get fired from a job, they're not supposed to say the things that you did. You're only supposed to boast a positive.
That's right. Yeah. And so let's say, okay, the neighbor thinks easy because it's, so I'm in the middle. Well, let's say I'm at the end. My neighbor keeps on, trespassing my property. And then on this side, there's someone who, I'm talking to, and they're a friend of mine. And so I'm not going to bring it up and complain about it. Right. And then if they're like, well, now if they're like, well, the neighbor wants to use some of my yard to do something, then I would say, I don't think that's a good idea because, because, in this situation that didn't work well for me, so if it's something like that, that's a little different because they're trying to make a decision.
Sure.
right? As opposed to just saying,
You just
yeah,
know
my
it.
stupid neighbor,
Right.
right?
Just giving the information out.
Yeah.
By the way, Sophia was over
Yeah.
there, burn out
That's
somebody's
right.
driveway. You know?
So we don't have to hide sin, but we also don't need to tell everyone, right? So we tell the people that are appropriate. We never lie. But here's the other thing: we defend them. So yeah, okay, my neighbor trespassed my property. Does it mean that he abuses children? No, right? So I'm not going to make him look like he's this awful person. I'm going to tell him that he's wrong about this thing, but he might be a stand-up dad, right? Who's just, got this one problem, right? And so my job is not to make him look like the most evil person ever because he did this one thing to me, right? So I defend him in as much as I can, right? So if my neighbor said, well, hey, this neighbor who's transgressing my property, hey, our neighbor was saying that he's really good at investing. Do you know anything about that? I mean, I don't, but maybe he is. As opposed to saying, well, he transgresses my property all the time, so. Yeah, right. So, I leave that be. And that would be a way of speaking well of them, defending them, and then explaining everything in the kindest way. If he only comes, like I do have a neighbor who has done this a couple of things, but I know why he does it because he's got an issue himself, right? And so I'm not gonna be like, well, I'm calling the police. No, I don't need to. I know there's a reason, and so I'm gonna explain it that way for now. I could call them and be like, hey, this guy's on my property again. Come over here, but I'm not gonna do that because I can explain it in a way that's helpful. So that's our first knee-jerk response, not immediate sue him, call the police, but try to work it out. Definitely don't tell everybody about it. And if it comes to having to do something about it, you just talk to the authorities about those things, right? But the goal here is that you would be able to uphold your neighbor, right? So the commandments, they're for you, yes, but they're meant to be how you love someone else. How do I love my neighbor? So if I'm using this commandment to make my neighbor look bad, right? Or we're trying to say, well, I can do this to him. I can do this bad thing. That's what we avoid. All right. Let's go to this. So page 58. My God has, so I'm at this how Christians should be taught to confess. My God has given me a good name and reputation that I might cover my neighbor's sins and shortcomings with mercy. Now, here's the thing. That's what we're supposed to do, right? If he comes over my property one time, I talked to him about it, but I just, it's all right. You're having a bad day or you did the wrong thing. I forgive you, just whatever. So you have mercy on him in order to preserve his name and reputation in the community. Okay, so here's the italics, this first one that in italics. Have I told the truth in court or in school before authorities or before my parents when I knew the truth? So again, that's sort of always telling the truth. And if you've been tempted to sort of smudge a little or not include some things or, to make that person look bad, that's the problem. Okay. All righty. Maybe it's too bad Katie's not here. I'm sure she has felt this impulse to be like, yeah, but that guy's a bad guy.
Sure.
I'm sure she sees a lot. Yeah, I'm sure she sees a lot of bad stuff.
Well, really? Well, that's exactly right. Because when she goes to court for, say she pulls me over or whatever, and I give her a hard time, they have to say only exactly what it is.
Right.
There's no opinion on the person at all.
Yeah.
So it's only this is what happened exactly word for word.
Yeah.
Whatever made it.
And even though she's tempted because she knows the guy, but she's got to pull back and say, this is what happened.
Law is this.
Right.
From like everything that you're saying so far since I've been coming here, it seems like that's pretty much the law of the land.
Right.
It's like we follow so much of the Bible.
That's right.
In the government that it's like the things that you get in trouble for are telling you not to do it.
That's right.
Commandments,
right. Which is good.
Somebody, right.
That's right.
Stealing.
Okay, so let's, we are going to go a little bit, well, you know what, let's stop there and I'll do catch up next time because I think that will be good for us to, then I can start fresh on lesson 3. So we will, let's stop there. and we'll look at the liturgy next time on page 61 and then get into lesson 3. Okay? We'll close with prayer. Or wait, before we do, any questions? Anything you want to deal with? So I want to keep it open to you. If ever you're like, I really was thinking about this, you can email me or bring it, on a piece of paper and give it to me, and then I will answer you in email or text, just to, if you have anything that's sort of a burning question after we talk about this. My other encouragement is read these. I'm not going to keep track of it, but the things that are around this, these texts, they're really, really good, and they explain things super well. So if you're like, wow, what did he say about that? Everything that's good about the 4th commandment is going to be right here, or the 6th, or whatever. So that's the nice thing about this, is it includes all that stuff. So use this as your resource as you're going through this. It'll be super helpful. Okay.
I do have a question.
Yeah.
So last week's sermon, this has nothing to do with what we do.
Oh, yeah, sure.
This is something. You read Genesis 1.
Yes.
Right? And it said that God created the earth and an outlet, right? And then the firmament separated the waters from above from the waters on the earth.
Yes.
And then he's created what is called firmament. Is that indicate are they trying to say that space is water?
In a way, yes.
So all the cosmos would be.
I don't think it's water like the ocean, but I'm glad you asked that, because
It's been bugging me ever since.
I'm happy you asked it, because that is, I'm going to say it worse than what Martin Luther. So I'm going to look that up and I'll bring it next time, because Martin Luther has a great comment on that, and he says it better than I do, but it's what you're saying. So it is that they're from the water above, in the sense that life is, we sort of know that, right? Life's out of water.
Sure.
Life can't exist without water, right? But it's sort of hard for us to wait, so there's water, because that's like the big deal, right? Well, space has no water, right? That's what everyone. Right.
I've never been to space.
Right. So yeah, but basically that's it, right? There is water above, right? And what does that mean, right? So, but he has a great explanation of that. My simpleton answer is, well, there's water up there. That's all.
Sure. Well, my coworker, so I brought it up to one of my guys that I work with. He's involved in his church quite a bit.
Oh, yeah.
He's a Lutheran too, out in Railroad. And he said he really didn't know. But my coworker overheard us, and he's like, well, it's the rain. It's the water. In the
so
sky.
That's one common answer. But Martin Luther, he gave an even better one. Okay. I don't think that's absolutely wrong. But in a way, that is the firmament, right? That space between us. So it's almost like, well, is there always water up there?
Sure. And then I was like, well, what about, is it the space to the,
is the
firmament supposed to be like a dome around?
I think that's a great question. So let me look and see. I might even print off what he says, because it's so good. And he thinks about it. So we always think of people in the past as dumb. And you might not think this anymore because you're in a classical school, but they were geniuses.
Right.
Martin Luther was a genius. He knew Latin, and he could dissect an argument better than I think probably anyone could do today. But that was just sort of their training back then. And so his thoughts go so much, more in detail, and how he thinks through that. So I love having his perspective. But anyway, I'll look that up and I will get it to you.
Appreciate that.
Because so next week, so the 23rd, we're going to have class on 3 p.m.
Yeah.
And I will have it at that class.
I've been meaning to ask you about it, and it's been bugging me ever since. Not bugging me, but it's just been like a thing on the back of my brain here.
Yeah. No, I love it. Well, these are the kind of things where it's like, it's good to be humbled, because I don't know everything. So
sure.
But I'm gonna look that up.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
All right. Well, let's close with prayer. Dear Father in heaven, I give you thanks for Madison and for Chris. I ask that you would bless and keep them this day and always through your Son, Jesus Christ. Bless their families, and especially Katie as she learns this material as well, and as Katie and Chris look into what is your truth and how to take hold of it in your church today. We ask that you would bless Sophia in her studies as well, and may you continue to bind us closer and closer together as Christians and brothers and sisters in Christ. Amen. So, Madison, I said that you would need to do some